Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. The first time my satellite phone made noise in months, it sounded wrong. Too sharp, like a smoke alarm in a church. I was halfway through sharpening a draw knife at the workbench, the blade clamped in a vise, my hand steady from habit more than caffeine. Outside, the wind dragged dry snow across the clearing in thin sheets. The kind of morning that makes the world look clean and quiet, even when you know better. The phone sat on a shelf above the bench, wrapped in a faded green pouch, its battery usually removed and stored separate. I kept it that way on purpose. Batteries swell, contacts corrode. Electronics die slow deaths if you let them sit like they're immortal. But I'd charged it the day before. Not because I expected a call, because one of my rules, one I used to teach to young soldiers who still believed in luck, was simple. If you have a tool, keep it ready, even if you think you'll never need it. The chirp came again. I wiped my hands on my jeans, reached up, pulled the phone down, and flipped it open. No caller ID, no ring. Just a plain text screen like it belonged to a different decade. Emergency alert, survive or die. That was it. No location, no guidance, no follow-up. My first thought was that it was some kind of test, an exercise message that got pushed wrong, a bureaucratic mistake, or a prank by somebody with access they shouldn't have. My second thought came right behind it. If it's reaching my satellite phone, it's reaching everyone's. I stared at the words until the letters felt like they were pressing into my eyes. Then the signal indicator dropped from a full bar to nothing. I thumbed the menu, tried to force a reconnect. Nothing. I stepped outside, held the phone up like that would help, turned slowly in place. The mountains didn't care. The pines didn't care. The sky, flat gray behind moving wind, didn't care either. No signal. The phone didn't chirp again. I stood there for a full minute, letting the cold find the seams in my clothes, letting the silence settle. Then I did what training does to you when your brain wants to freeze. I moved. I went straight into my routine. First, verify whether this is local or global. I jogged across the clearing to the small shed that held my solar setup. Panels on a rack angled toward the low winter sun, cables running into a charge controller and a bank of deep cycle batteries. It wasn't fancy. 12-volt system, with an inverter for when I needed standard household power. The charge controller screen was dark. Not dim, not dead battery dark, blank. I opened the shed door wider, stepped inside, and checked the battery connections with the headlamp. The headlamp clicked on. Good. My eyes tracked the wiring, the fuses, the breaker. Everything looked intact. I touched the inverter. Cold, no fan noise. I pulled my multimeter from the wall, turned the dial, touched the probes to the battery posts. The display didn't light. I tried again. Nothing. My headlamp was still working, but that was a simple device. Battery, LED, switch. My multimeter had a microcontroller. My charge controller definitely did. I walked out of the shed slowly, scanning the property like something could explain this. The cabin sat behind me, a simple one-story build I'd put up myself with a metal roof and heavy timber beams. To the right, my greenhouse frame stood empty for winter. Beyond that, the tree line rose thick and dark. I forced myself to breathe. Second, verify whether the world beyond the clearing still exists the way it did yesterday. I went inside and grabbed the old hand-crank radio from the pantry shelf. It wasn't my main radio. My main setup was a compact shortwave receiver with a digital tuner, great for pulling in distant broadcasts if the ionosphere behaved. But the hand-crank unit was simple and tough, It had a small internal generator and a basic analog tuner. I set it on the table and started cranking. The little indicator light came on, faint but alive. I turned the dial across AM frequencies. Static. Heavy, ugly static, like a storm sitting on the band. I tried FM. Static. I tried the weather band. Static again. No station identifiers, no voices, no music, no emergency tones. The cabin felt smaller suddenly, like the walls had moved in by inches. I set the radio down and listened without it. Nothing but the wind, the tick of cooling metal from the wood stove, my own breathing. My name is Cole Mercer. I'm 42 years old. I spent 14 years in the Army, most of it in roles that involved keeping people alive when everything else was trying to kill them. After I got out, I taught survival courses, real ones, not the weekend fantasy camps, until I got tired of the same question from the same kind of student. Will we really ever need this? So, I took my own advice and stopped betting my life on the grid. I bought land in a remote valley in southwest Montana, outside a town small enough that the locals still wave on the road. I built my cabin, my shed, my systems. I hunted, trapped, grew what I could, traded for what I couldn't. I wasn't hiding from the world, I just wanted my life to work without it. Now, the world had apparently decided to test that. I walked to the window and looked up. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks, like when you stare at snow too long and everything starts to shimmer. Then the color deepened. A band of greenish light stretched across the sky, faint but unmistakable, rippling as if the air itself had turned into water. It wasn't the usual northern latitude aurora that shows up now and then on cold, clear nights. This was visible in daylight. And it wasn't just green. There were streaks of violet and pale red braided through it like bruises. I'd seen auroras before. I'd seen them from far north, from high desert, from places where the sky still belonged to nature. This one felt different. Like a warning flare that someone had fired over the whole planet. I grabbed my binoculars and stepped outside again. The aurora moved slow and wide, draped over the clouds like a curtain behind a stage. Then I heard something else. A distant roar. Deep, rising, then fading. Like thunder that didn't know where it was. I swung the binoculars toward the sound, scanning the sky over the ridgeline. For a few seconds, I saw nothing. Then, in a gap between clouds, I caught it. A plane. Not a little two-seater. A commercial jet, high altitude, the white fuselage catching light even through the gray. It was moving wrong, not steady, not level. The nose dipped, corrected, dipped again, like a drunk trying to walk a straight line. I held my breath without meaning to. The plane rolled slightly to the left, corrected. Rolled again, worse this time. Then it started descending. Too fast. No contrail, no clean engine note, just that distant roar. I tracked it until it vanished behind the ridge to the east. A few seconds later, a muted boom came through the mountains. I didn't see fire from where I stood, but I felt it in my chest, sound carried by cold air and terrain. I lowered the binoculars slowly. That's when the fear finally made itself plain. Not panic, not screaming. Just a hard, cold fact settling into my bones. Something had reached out and slapped the modern world in the face. And the modern world had gone down. I moved fast after that because speed is what you can control when you can't control anything else. I checked my perimeter first. Not because I expected immediate trouble, but because your home is your anchor. If you lose it, you lose options. My cabin sat in a natural bowl with a creek to the south and a thick stand of timber to the north. I had a single dirt access road that came in from the west, winding through trees and switchbacks. I'd placed simple early warning measures along it over the years, nothing that would hurt anyone unless they ignored obvious signs. A trip line with empty cans tied to it. A tensioned cord connected to a bell inside the cabin. A motion-triggered trail camera, though I suspected that one was dead now. I walked the line anyway, checked the cords, tightened the knots, made sure nothing had been disturbed. Snow told stories. The road was clean except for old tracks from my own truck, frozen in place like fossils. Then I went back inside and started inventory without writing. My notebooks were paper. My pencil was still good. But I didn't want to waste time recording what I already knew. Food. I had about 4 months of staples if I ate smart. Beans, rice, flour, oats, salt, sugar, canned meat, canned vegetables, home-canned jars from last summer. I had dried herbs and spices because morale matters. I had a root cellar that kept the potatoes and onions longer than most people think. Water. I had the creek. I had gravity-fed storage barrels. I had a hand pump well that I'd installed as backup, no electric required. Heat, wood stove, wood pile, saws, axes, enough. Mobility, 1 truck, an older model I'd specifically chosen because it had fewer electronic dependencies than modern vehicles. Still, it had ignition components and a basic engine control module. Most newer engines do. The question was whether everything with a microchip is fried was literal or just broad. I needed to test it. Security. I had a hunting rifle, a shotgun, a sidearm, and plenty of ammunition. Nothing exotic. Practical tools. I also had less dramatic options. Bear spray, a heavy flashlight, axes, a stout walking staff. I didn't want trouble. But wanting isn't a plan. Comms. My satellite phone was dead. Most radios were likely down. But I did have one thing that might survive. A small old vacuum tube shortwave receiver I'd bought at an estate sale years ago. It was heavy, ugly, and beautiful. Tubes don't care about microchips. They care about heat and power and the laws of physics. I pulled it out from the cabinet where I kept it wrapped in cloth, carried it to the table like it was a sleeping child, and connected it to a simple wire antenna that ran up into the rafters. Power was the problem. My solar setup was likely toast, but I had a manual generator, an old pedal-powered unit I used as a workout sometimes, because I like knowing my body can still do work when the world won't. I set it up, connected the tube radio to it, and started pedaling. The radio's dial lit faintly. The tubes began to glow like small orange eyes. I turned the knob slowly, listening for anything that wasn't static. At first, nothing. Then, faint, warbly, something that sounded like a voice, not clear, not local. I adjusted, waited, adjusted again. The voice sharpened. If you can hear this, emergency broadcast, national, repeat, no power grid. Avoid population centers, maintain. The transmission faded and returned like a drowning man's hand breaking the surface. I leaned in close, heart thumping. The voice came back stronger for a moment. Geomagnetic event, unprecedented. Satellites offline. Aviation. Ground all aircraft. Repeat, do not attempt. Then it collapsed into static again. But I'd heard enough. This wasn't just my valley. This was everything. I stopped pedaling and let the radio die. My legs trembled slightly, not from effort, but from adrenaline. The alert on my satellite phone wasn't a joke. It was a message that someone, some organization, some system, had pushed out before the lights went out. Survive or die. That phrasing bothered me more than the event itself. It wasn't shelter in place. It wasn't seek help. It wasn't remain calm. It sounded like a challenge or a command. And when you've spent enough time around people who think power is a personality trait, you learn the smell of a trap. I had to decide what to do next, and I had to do it without the comfort of updates, maps, or outside reassurance. Stay put and let the storm pass, if it would pass. Or move, connect with others, gather information, and build something bigger than one man in one cabin. I looked around my kitchen. My life was arranged in a way that made sense. Tools where they belonged, food stored clean, boots by the door, coat on the hook. Everything had a place. A place is only safe if it stays yours. If the grid was down, people would scatter in waves. First wave, confusion. Accidents, fires from stoves and candles and generators used wrong. Hospitals overloaded. Second wave, panic, empty shelves, desperate driving. Violence in parking lots. Third wave, organization, groups forming. Some good, some bad. The bad ones always move faster because they don't argue with conscience. I'd been to enough disaster zones to know the pattern. And my cabin wasn't invisible. Not forever. I decided on a hybrid approach, my favorite kind, because it's what real life forces on you. I would secure home for the short term, then go out. But not blind. I pulled my old paper maps from the cabinet. Topographic sheets with creases and notes in pencil. County roads, Forest Service trails, water sources, elevation marks. I had a map for the nearest town, another for the highway corridor, and one for the whole region. I circled 3 locations. The small town 30 miles west, where there would be people and supplies, but also risk. A rural volunteer fire station 15 miles south, likely a hub for information and equipment. A state highway junction east of me, where traffic would bottleneck, and where I could observe without committing. Observation first, commitment second. I packed like I used to teach, not heavy but complete. A rucksack with a sleeping bag, wool layers, rain shell, gloves, spare socks. A compact shelter tarp and paracord. A stainless steel pot, a metal cup, fire starters, and a ferro rod. Water filter, purification tablets, and a collapsible canteen. A first aid kit with real contents, tourniquet, pressure bandage, antiseptic, pain relief, suture kit. Practical, not fantasy. A fixed blade knife, a folding saw, a small hatchet, a headlamp with spare batteries, plus a simple chemical light stick because simplicity survives. A paper notebook and pencils. A small mirror and whistle, old school signaling. A handheld compass. Food for 2 days in the bag, jerky, nuts, oat bars, hard cheese. Weapons. I slung the shotgun because it's versatile. Birds, small game, close defense if it came to that. I carried the sidearm on my belt because it's faster to bring up than a long gun. I wasn't going to look for a fight. But I was going to look like someone who couldn't be bullied easily. Before I left, I did one more thing. I walked to the back of the cabin and opened a floor hatch under the rug, my small storm cache. Inside were sealed containers, extra ammunition, medical supplies, a spare water filter, and a short list of items I'd learned to value when everyone else is improvising. A simple hand crank flashlight, a mechanical can opener, a pack of sewing needles and heavy thread, a few rolls of duct tape, a length of copper wire. I added one more item from my kitchen, a bag of coffee. It sounds stupid until you've seen what a cup of coffee can buy when the world is falling apart. Then I locked the cabin, set the perimeter noisemakers, and headed out on foot. The air tasted metallic. That was the first physical clue that something was still happening above us. I walked the access road down through the trees, snow crunching under my boots, listening for engines. None. No distant highway hum, no far-off chainsaw, no airplanes overhead. just wind and the occasional creak of a pine trunk shifting. After an hour, I reached a viewpoint where the valley opened and I could see toward the west. Normally, at this time of day, you'd see thin lines of exhaust from houses, maybe a pickup moving along the county road, maybe a school bus if it was a weekday. I saw smoke, not from chimneys, from the town. A low, dark smear rising into the gray. I stopped and watched. The smoke thickened in pulses, like something was burning in fits. Multiple fires, not one. I thought about going straight there and then, curiosity pulling me like gravity. But that's how you get yourself in trouble, by walking into someone else's chaos. Instead, I took the side trail that cut south toward the volunteer fire station. It was a 2-bay building on a rural road, usually quiet. I knew a couple of the volunteers from when I'd taken a CPR refresher and donated some old gear. Good people, competent mostly, the kind who show up when everyone else is still asking questions. I reached the station around mid-afternoon. The parking lot was crowded. That alone told me everything. Pickups, sedans, a couple of old farm trucks. People standing in groups talking with their hands. The bay doors were open. The fire engine sat inside like a big red animal, but its lights were off. I approached slowly, letting people see me from a distance, not sneaking. A man near the door spotted me and stiffened. He was broad-shouldered, wearing a work jacket, holding a tire iron like he'd been born with it. "Hey," he called, "stop there." I stopped, raised my hand slightly, palms visible, shotgun slung but not in my hands. "I'm not here to cause trouble," I said. "Name's Cole. I live up in the valley. I came to see if you folks had information." His eyes flicked to the shotgun, then to my face, weighing. A woman stepped out from inside the station, maybe late 30s, hair pulled back, wearing a volunteer department hoodie. She looked exhausted already. "Cole Mercer?" she asked. "Yeah." Recognition softened her expression a fraction. "I'm Rosa. You came to that medical training last spring." "Yeah," I said. "Good course." Rosa walked closer, keeping her voice low. "We've got a mess. Grid is down, phones are dead. Cars aren't starting unless they're old enough. People say planes fell, and there's fires in town. We've got a generator, but the control panel is fried. The engine might run if we can bypass it, but nobody here knows how." I glanced inside. The generator sat outside the station behind a fence. A commercial unit, likely diesel, usually reliable. "Where's your chief?" I asked. Rosa's mouth tightened. He tried to drive to the county office. Truck died on the road. He walked back. He's inside. The man with the tire iron lowered it slightly, still wary but less aggressive now. Rosa's eyes stayed on me. "Did you get an alert?" I felt my stomach knot. "On my satellite phone, just 3 words." She nodded, like she'd expected it. "Same. People are calling it a slogan, like someone wants it to spread." I scanned the crowd. "How many got it?" "Almost everyone here," she said. "Some folks in town didn't, but enough did that it's all anyone's talking about." I took a breath. "Any official broadcast?" Rosa shook her head. "Nothing clear, static. A few fragments on an old radio one guy brought, but it comes and goes." I nodded toward the generator. "Show me." Rosa led me around the side fence. Up close, the unit looked like a modern diesel generator set. Engine, alternator, control box, all in a steel housing. The control panel door was open. Inside, the display was dead. There was a faint smell, hot electronics, the kind that lingers after a surge. "I've seen this before," I said, mostly to myself. Rosa watched me. "Can you fix it?" "Maybe not fix," I said. "But we might be able to run it." I knelt, examined the wiring diagram inside the panel door. Most of it was printed in small text, but the logic was familiar. Modern generator sets use an electronic controller to manage starting, voltage regulation, engine protection. If the controller is dead, you can sometimes start the engine manually, bypass the safety interlocks, and use the alternator output carefully. It's risky, but so is freezing in the dark. I looked at Rosa. "Do you have fuel?" "Full tank," she said, "plus a few drums." I nodded. "Do you have a manual for the engine?" She blinked. "Inside." "Get it," I said. "And get me 2 people who can follow directions without guessing." Rosa turned and shouted for help. 2 volunteers came over. One a young guy with grease under his nails, the other an older farmer with calm eyes. We worked fast. I used the manual to identify the starter solenoid, the fuel shutoff, and the basic wiring needed to crank the engine. We checked oil, coolant, and the air filter. Then came the moment of truth. Would the starter circuit respond, or was everything dead? I had the young guy hold a heavy screwdriver across the solenoid terminals. Old trick, crude but effective. The farmer stood by with a fire extinguisher because safety doesn't stop mattering just because the world is weird. "On my count," I said. Rosa watched from behind the fence, hands clasped tight. "1, I said. 2, 3. The screwdriver touched. The starter engaged with a deep clunk and a brief grind. The diesel engine turned over once, twice, then it caught. A roar, a shudder, and the generator set came alive in a cloud of exhaust that smelled like work. The sound of it made people turn their heads across the parking lot like animals hearing rain. Rosa exhaled hard. "You did it." "Not done yet," I said, watching the engine. "We need to make sure the alternator output isn't going to fry anything else. Keep it isolated." We ran heavy extension cables to power lights inside the station and a few critical outlets. No one was plugging in laptops. Those were bricks now anyway. But light changes everything. It calms people. It lets you organize. Within minutes, the station became a hub. People started bringing news. A man came in saying the grocery store in town was looted within the first hour after the power went out. A teenager said her mom's car stopped in the middle of the road and wouldn't restart. An older guy with a weathered face said he'd seen green light in the sky like a curtain, and then heard explosions far off. And then came the part I didn't like. A woman arrived breathless, cheeks red from cold, voice shaking. "There's a group," she said. "In town, they're making people say it. The words. They're writing it on doors." Rosa frowned. "Who?" "I don't know," the woman said. "Men with armbands, like they already planned this. They're calling themselves something, the directive. They said the alert is law now. They said if you won't live by it, you don't deserve to live." The station went quiet. That's when I felt the shape of the real threat. The sky event was bad, the collapse was bad, but collapse doesn't automatically mean cruelty. Cruelty takes someone choosing it. And someone had apparently already chosen. Rosa stepped closer to me, voice low. "Cole, I need to ask you something." "Go ahead." She swallowed. "What do we do? People are terrified. They're going to either run to town for supplies or lock themselves in their houses and wait to starve. We have kids here, elderly. We can't fight a gang." I looked at the faces around us. A volunteer firefighter with soot on his sleeve, trying to look brave. A mother holding a toddler who didn't understand why the adults were shaking. The young mechanic who'd just helped me start the generator, eyes wide like he'd just realized the world was real and fragile. I'd taught survival as a skill set, but the truth was this: survival is mostly decision-making under stress, and the first decision is always the same. We don't let fear pick our moves. We organize, I said. We get information. We make a plan that keeps people alive without walking into town blind. And we don't advertise that we have power. Rosa's eyes sharpened. They'll come here. Eventually, I said. If they're organized and they think the alert is permission, they'll come to any place that looks like resources. The farmer who'd stood by with the extinguisher nodded slowly. We can barricade. We can watch the road. Yes, I said. But more important than barricades is unity. If people scatter, they get picked off one by one. If we stay together, we have leverage. A voice from the crowd, angry, male. So what, we just sit here and wait? I turned toward it, a man in his 30s, face flushed, hands clenched. My brother's in town, he said. I'm not waiting. I held his gaze. Then you go smart, not alone, not in a panic. We do a recon first. Recon, he repeated, like it was a foreign word. Information gathering, I said. We find out what's actually happening in town, where the fires are, where this group is, and where supplies might still be. We bring back what we can without getting trapped. Rosa nodded. Who goes? I didn't want to volunteer myself as the leader, but I knew how this works. If you have the skill, you step up, or someone less careful does. I go, I said, with 2 others, one who knows town roads, one who can keep their head. The angry man stepped forward immediately. I'll go. I studied him, too emotional, too personal. Not you, I said. He bristled. You don't get to. I do, I said, calm. Because this is about coming back alive, not proving something. Rosa stepped between us. Enough. Cole's right. A different man raised his hand slightly. I can take you, he said. Name's Hank Loader. I run cattle east of town. I know every back road and drainage out there. Hank looked like what he said. Weathered, strong, practical. Behind him, a woman with short dark hair spoke up. I'm Maya Chen. I used to fly medevac. Not flying anymore, obviously, but I can keep calm, and I can handle myself. Her voice was steady. Her eyes were tired but focused. I nodded. Good, 3 of us. Rosa grabbed my arm briefly. Cole, please bring back something we can use and don't get killed. I'll do my best, I said. It wasn't a promise. Promises are for when you control outcomes. We left before sunset, because night makes everything harder and because you don't want to be on the road when scared people start making bad decisions. Hank brought an old truck from his ranch, one of those heavy farm pickups that looked like it could survive a war because it basically had. It started, but barely, and it ran rough like the electrical system had taken a hit, but not a full death. Carbureted? I asked. Hank nodded. Old enough to drink. Good, I said. That gives us a chance. Maya climbed in the back with a rifle across her knees, eyes scanning the tree line. I rode passenger. Hank drove. We took back roads, avoiding the main highway. Even from a distance, we could see the town was darker than it should be, only lit by firelight and the pale aurora overhead. The aurora had intensified as dusk came on. It was everywhere now. Green ribbons, violet seams, a faint red glow that made the snow look bruised. It was beautiful, and it made my skin crawl. As we approached the outskirts, we saw the first stranded cars. Modern sedans parked at odd angles on the shoulder, doors open, hazard lights dead. People had abandoned them like shells. Hank slowed. You seeing this? He murmured. Yeah, I said. A mile farther, we saw something worse. A small plane, single engine, the kind a local might fly, had come down in a field. It wasn't exploded into pieces, but it was broken, nose down, wings bent, no lights, no movement. Maya leaned forward from the back. "That's a hard landing," she said quietly. "If someone was in there." "We can't stop," Hank said, voice tight. I hated it, but he was right. Not on this mission, not in this moment. We reached a ridge where we could look down on the town. Most of it was dark. A few fires burned, one near what looked like a gas station, another near the edge of the residential area. Smoke rose in thick columns, drifting under the aurora like dirty gauze. And there were people moving in the streets. Not crowds like a parade, groups, purposeful. Maya raised binoculars. "Those aren't random," she said. I took my own binoculars and focused. Armbands. Even at this distance, I could see the pale bands on their sleeves, reflective in firelight. They moved in lines of 3 and 4, stopping at houses, banging on doors, dragging something out, maybe people, maybe supplies. A vehicle sat near the center of town, an old box truck probably pre-electronic enough to still run. People in armbands were loading it. Hank's jaw flexed. "That's not right." "No," I said. "That's organized theft." Maya lowered her binoculars. "They'll control food, water, fuel. They'll make people dependent." "And then the slogan becomes real," I said. "Survive or die, by their rules." We parked the truck behind a stand of trees and moved on foot, keeping low, using fences and outbuildings for cover. The air smelled like smoke and something else. Ozone, faint, like after lightning. We heard shouting ahead. We froze. A man's voice, loud, commanding. "Say it." Another voice, shaky. I don't... Say it," the first voice barked. A slap. Not the wet sound people imagine from movies, but the sharp crack of a hand hitting skin in cold air. Then the shaky voice, louder now, forced, "Survive or die." A cheer from several men. My hands tightened around my shotgun strap. Maya's breathing changed, controlled anger. Hank whispered, "We should leave." "Not yet," I whispered back. "We need something useful, a weak point, a pattern." We edged closer until we could see around a corner. In the glow of a burning trash can, 5 men with armbands stood around a young guy on his knees. 2 women stood off to the side, hands up, faces streaked with soot. A small child clung to one of them, silent, eyes huge. One of the armband men held a clipboard, and a marker like this was an enrollment office. Another held a short-barreled shotgun at a casual angle, not aimed but ready. The leader, a tall man with a shaved head, smiled like he was enjoying himself. "Good," he said to the guy on his knees. "Now you understand. The old world made you soft. The new world makes you honest." He turned toward the women. "You too, say it." The woman with the child shook her head, tears on her cheeks. "Please," she said. "We have..." The tall man stepped closer. "Say it." My body wanted to move, to intervene, to end it. But intervention, without a plan, is how you turn 3 survivors into 3 bodies. Maya leaned close to my ear and whispered, "We can't take 5. "I know," I whispered. Hank's voice trembled with rage. "They're doing this everywhere." "Probably," I whispered. "And they want witnesses. They want it to spread." The tall man raised his hand again, fingers open. The woman flinched. And then, from somewhere deeper in town, a gunshot cracked. Everyone froze. The tall man snapped his head toward the sound. "What was that?" Another shot, then shouting. The armband men moved instantly, professional in a way that made my stomach sink. They weren't random tough guys. They had drilled. "Move," the leader barked. 2 with me. 3 secure the civilians. If anyone runs, drop them. He didn't say it with emotion. Just procedure. 2 men followed him toward the gunshots. 3 stayed, tightening their circle around the civilians. That shift, splitting their force, was the first opportunity we'd gotten. Maya looked at me, eyes sharp. "We can grab the family now, pull them out while they're distracted." "And then what?" I whispered. "They'll chase." Hank nodded toward a narrow alley between buildings. "That way leads to the creek. We can lose them in the brush." I made a decision that I knew would haunt me if it went wrong. "We do it," I whispered. "Fast, quiet. No shooting unless we have to. Maya, you take the kid. Hank, you pull the young guy. I'll cover." We moved. I stepped out first, walking like I belonged, shotgun still slung but hand on the grip. One of the armband men noticed me too late. His eyes widened. "Hey!" I closed the distance in 2 long strides and drove my shoulder into his chest. He stumbled back, surprised, more than hurt. I grabbed his shotgun barrel and shoved it down and away before he could bring it up. Maya darted in, scooped the child into her arms, pulled the mother along with her free hand. Hank yanked the young guy up by his jacket and half-dragged him toward the alley. The second armband man swung a flashlight toward us. Dead light, just habit, then reached for his weapon. I slammed the first man's shotgun stock into his wrist. He cried out, weapon clattering. The second man raised his gun, panic making him clumsy. I didn't aim for his head. I didn't aim for anything permanent. I drove the shotgun stock into his ribs hard enough to knock air out of him and sent him stumbling into a wall. "Move!" I hissed. We ran. Footsteps behind us. Shouts. "Stop! Stop!" We hit the alley, turned, sprinted toward the creek line where the town's edge broke into brush and snow-covered banks. The young guy Hank hauled was trembling so hard his teeth clicked. I thought they were going to. "Keep moving," Hank growled. Maya kept the child tight against her chest. The child didn't cry. She stared at me over Maya's shoulder like she'd already aged 10 years in one afternoon. We reached the creek and plunged into the brush on the far side, moving downhill, using the sound of running water to mask our steps. Behind us, the shouts grew louder, then faded, then grew again. They were searching, organized. I felt a bitter respect for it. Respect and hatred can exist at the same time. That's another thing people don't talk about. We pushed through the brush until Hank held up a fist. We stopped, crouched behind a fallen log. Hank leaned close. Truck his back up on the ridge. If they saw us come this way, they might cut us off. I listened. Heard distant voices moving along the bank above us. Maya whispered, "We can't bring them back to the fire station." "No," I said. "Not with a tail." The mother, breathing hard, finally spoke. "Where are we going?" I looked at her. Her face was streaked with soot, hair messy, eyes raw, but she held herself together because she had to. "What's your name?" I asked. "Erin," she said. "Erin Price. This is my sister, Lila, and my daughter, June." I nodded once. "Okay, Erin, we're getting you out. Quiet. Stay close." The young guy Hank hauled swallowed hard. "I'm Derek," he said. "Derek Price." Erin blinked at him, startled. "Derek, you're—" "My cousin," Derek said, voice breaking. "I was trying to get to you. They grabbed me." Erin squeezed his arm. "You're okay. You're okay. Family ties. That changes decisions, too." We needed an exit route that didn't lead back to our truck and didn't lead straight to the station. I studied the terrain, memory overlaying map lines in my head. There was an old utility corridor that ran along the creek south of town, an access path used for maintenance years ago. It would be overgrown now, but still navigable. It led toward Hank's ranch country, away from the main roads. "Hank," I whispered, "Can we cut south along the creek and reach your place on foot?" Hank hesitated. "It's a long walk in this cold." "Do you have shelter along the way?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Old line shack, 3 walls and a stove." "That's enough," I said. "We go there." We moved again, slower now, careful, using brush and dark to cover. The aurora pulsed overhead like a living thing. As we walked, the reality of the new world settled in around us. No engines, no streetlights, no distant music, no hum. Just smoke, cold, and human voices that carried farther than they should. We reached the utility corridor and followed it south. Behind us, the town kept burning. Ahead of us, the unknown waited. After an hour, we heard an engine. We froze. A vehicle was moving somewhere on the road above the creek. Its sound uneven but real. It wasn't a modern engine whisper. It was an older motor, loud, mechanical. The directive had vehicles. That made them more dangerous than I'd hoped. We ducked into thicker brush and waited as the engine passed overhead, and then faded. Aaron whispered, "Who are they?" I didn't sugarcoat it. People who think collapse gives them permission. Lila's voice was small. "Are there more?" "Probably," I said. "When rules disappear, some people decide they get to write new ones." Maya kept walking, jaw set. "We write ours," she murmured. By midnight, we reached Hank's line shack. It was barely a building. Rough boards, a sagging roof, a small iron stove with a pipe that leaned like it was tired, but it was out of the wind. Hank dug under a loose floor plank and pulled out a tin with matches and a little bundle of kindling. He moved like a man who'd prepared for bad days without admitting it. We got a fire going. The stove radiated heat slowly, the best kind, the kind that feels earned. June finally spoke, voice thin. "Is the sky broken?" Maya looked at her softly. "No," she said. "The sky is doing something unusual, but you're safe right now." June nodded like she believed it because she needed to. Aaron sat with her back to the wall, shaking slightly as shock wore off. "They said the alert was law," she whispered. "They said the old world died because it forgot the rule. Survive or die. They said they're restoring nature." Hank snorted quietly. "Nature doesn't need armbands." Derek stared into the stove. "They had a list," he said. "They were writing down names." That made the hairs on my neck rise. "A list of what?" I asked. Derek swallowed. "People who said it, people who didn't. They said the ones who didn't would be corrected." Maya's eyes narrowed. "That's not a gang. That's a movement." "Or a cult with logistics," I said. Rosa at the station had been right to worry. We couldn't fight something like that head-on with a handful of volunteers and a generator, but we also couldn't pretend it would go away. We needed intelligence, allies, and a plan that wasn't just hold the building and hope. I leaned back against the wall, feeling the ache in my shoulders, the steady thump of my heart. The alert on my satellite phone hadn't been a warning. Not really. It was a spark. And someone out there had built dry tinder piles in advance. I stared at the stove until my eyes blurred, then looked up at the others. "We go back to the station at first light," I said. "Not by the road, by foot, wide. We tell them what we saw. We change plans." Hank nodded. "My ranch has cattle, tools, old equipment. We can move people there if we have to." Maya looked at Aaron. "Do you have anyone else?" Aaron shook her head slowly. "Just us." Derek's voice was raw. "They're going to take the town." "Then we don't let them take everyone," I said. Outside, the wind shifted. The aurora's glow seeped through cracks in the boards, a faint green stain on the snow. I didn't sleep much. I lay with my back against the wall, shotgun within reach, listening to the sounds of others breathing, listening to the world. At some point, distant shouting carried on the wind from town, then faded. I wondered how many people had been forced to say 3 words to stay alive. I wondered how many had refused. And I wondered who had sent the alert in the first place, because it hadn't come from nowhere. The next morning, we moved before full daylight. We took the creek corridor back north, careful and quiet, keeping off the roads. The station came into view by a late morning. Smoke still rose from town. But the station itself looked calmer, more structured. People had organized sleeping areas. A couple of volunteers were posted as lookouts with binoculars and hunting rifles. Rosa met us at the fence, face tense until she saw Aaron and the others behind us. "Oh my God," she breathed. "You brought people." "And information," I said. We went inside and gathered a small group. Rosa, the chief, 2 volunteers who looked like they could hold steady, Hank, Maya, and me. I laid it out simply. "The directive is real," I said. "They have armbands, weapons, at least 1 vehicle, and they're forcing people to repeat the alert phrase. They're making lists. They're organized." The chief, an older man named Travis, ran a hand over his face. "How many?" "Hard to say," I admitted, "but enough to control a street and respond to gunfire with coordination." Rosa's eyes flicked to me. "Gunfire?" "There was resistance," Maya said. "Someone shot at them. It distracted them long enough for us to extract a family in Derrick." Travis looked grim. "So, there are still good people in town." "Yes," I said, "but they're outmatched." A volunteer asked, voice shaky, "What do they want?" "Control," I said, "resources, compliance. They're using the slogan like a badge." Rosa leaned forward. "What do we do?" This was the real moment. The crossroads. If we stayed, we might become a target. If we fled, we might become refugees. If we fought, we might lose. If we did nothing, the directive would spread. I took a breath. "We build a community that doesn't need them," I said. "A place with food, water, heat, and security. Hank has a ranch with old equipment. We can move the most vulnerable there first. The station stays as a relay point, but we stop advertising power. We keep lights covered at night." Travis frowned. "That's retreat." "It's repositioning," I said, "and it buys time. Time to gather allies. Time to set up watches. Time to figure out what still works. Radios, old vehicles, anything." Maya added quietly, "Time to decide what kind of people we are." The room went quiet again. Then Travis nodded once, slow. "Okay, we do it." We spent the rest of the day preparing. We inventoried supplies at the station, medical kits, tools, fuel. We organized people into teams: water, food, security, transport. We tested more vehicles. Older ones worked better. Newer ones were dead weight. Anything with modern electronic ignition and complex control modules was mostly useless. A couple of older diesel farm trucks could run if they could be started and kept running. A few motorcycles with simple systems still moved. Every time we got an engine to turn over, people looked like they wanted to cry with relief, because mobility is a hope. By evening, we had a convoy plan. 3 running trucks, 1 trailer for supplies, and a scout team on foot to check the route. As we worked, more people arrived from town, some injured, some carrying backpacks, some empty-handed and shaking. They all told the same story with different details. The directive had taken the grocery store. They'd taken the pharmacy. They'd posted men at key intersections like it was a checkpoint. They'd painted the slogan on the side of the courthouse. And they were recruiting, some willingly, some by fear. A teenage boy came in with red eyes and said, "They said if you join, you get food." That's how it starts. Hunger makes bargains. Late that night, one of our lookouts came in fast. "Lights on the road," he said, "coming from town." Rosa's face went pale. "How many?" "Hard to tell," he said, "at least one vehicle." Travis looked at me. "They found us." "Not necessarily," I said. "Could be scouting, could be random." But my gut said otherwise. Power draws predators. So does organization. I stepped outside into the cold and looked toward the road. In the distance, a single headlight bobbed through the trees. Not bright like modern headlights, dimmer, older. It stopped. A moment later, the light went out. Silence. Then a voice carried through the night, amplified by cold air. "Fire station," the voice called. "We know you're in there." Rosa whispered behind me. "Oh no." The voice continued, calm, confident. "This is the directive. The emergency alert is law. The old world is gone. The rule remains." A pause. Then the words, spoken like a ritual. "Survive or die." My jaw tightened. They weren't here to ask for help. They were here to claim. Travis whispered, "What do we do?" I watched the dark road, the trees, the faint aurora staining the clouds. "We don't open the gate," I said. "We don't negotiate in the open. And we don't let them see fear." Maya stepped up beside me, rifle steady. "If they try to come in, we stop them," I said. "But we avoid anything that turns this into a massacre. We defend, we don't execute. Because I refused to let their slogan rewrite our humanity." I raised my voice, projecting. "This is a volunteer station," I called into the night. "We're not looking for trouble. Keep moving." A laugh came back, light and ugly. "Trouble already arrived," the voice said. "We're offering clarity. The alert wasn't a suggestion. It was a sorting." My hands flexed. Then the voice said something that chilled me worse than the wind. "We know a former military instructor is with you." Rosa looked at me, eyes wide. Hank muttered, "How do they know that?" I didn't answer because the answer was obvious. They had a list. They had informants. They had planned. The voice continued, smooth as oil. "Cole Mercer. Step outside, we want to talk." My name in the dark felt like a hook under my ribs. Travis whispered, "Cole, don't." Maya's voice was low. "They want you isolated." I nodded slightly. They wanted me because people like me are useful or dangerous to groups like them. If they could recruit me, it would legitimize them. If they could kill me, it would scare everyone else into line. Either way, they'd win. I took a slow breath and made a choice. I stepped forward until I was visible in the thin light spilling from the station doorway. But I didn't go past the fence. I raised my voice again. "I'm right here," I called. "Say what you want from there." A pause. Then footsteps on the road, not running, controlled. A figure emerged from the trees about 60 yards away, hands visible, no weapon raised. Behind him, shadows moved, others keeping distance, flanking. The man's armband caught faint light. White cloth, crudely stitched. He stopped and called out, "We're building order. We're building a new society that doesn't rely on weak systems." The alert was the final truth. I kept my voice flat. "You're extorting people." He laughed softly. "We're selecting. The old world selected with money and comfort. We select with reality." Rosa whispered, "He's insane." "No," I whispered back. He's convinced. That's worse. The man continued. We heard you started a generator. That means you have power. That means you have resources. In the new world, resources belong to those who enforce the rule. I almost smiled, but it wasn't humor. So, you're thieves with a slogan. The man's tone sharpened. Watch your mouth. I came to offer you a place. Join us. Train our people. Help us build something strong. Or refuse, and you'll be treated like any other obstacle, a threat wrapped in invitation. I looked at the shadows behind him, at the movement in the trees. Who sent the alert? I asked. For the first time, he hesitated. Then he said, It doesn't matter. It mattered. But his answer told me he didn't know. Or he did and didn't want to say. I let a beat pass, then said, No deal, leave. The man's voice went cold. Then you've chosen. I held my ground. So have you. Another pause. Then he said it again, louder, like a chant. Survive or die. And from the shadows, other voices echoed it back. A chorus. Not desperate, not afraid, devoted. The man turned and walked back into the trees like he knew he'd already planted his flag. The headlight didn't come back on. The vehicle didn't move. But the darkness felt occupied now, like eyes were watching. Travis exhaled. They'll come back. Yes, I said, and next time it won't be a conversation. Rosa's voice trembled. We can't hold this place. I looked at Hank. How fast can we move people to your ranch? Hank swallowed. By morning, if we're ready. We get ready, I said. That night, nobody slept much. We covered windows, we kept the generator off. We posted watches. We moved supplies quietly. We packed families and medical gear in water containers. In the early hours before dawn, under a sky still stained green, we rolled out. 3 trucks, a trailer, people packed in with blankets and whatever they could carry. No headlights unless necessary. We moved slow, using the dark like camouflage. The station faded behind us. It felt like leaving a piece of the old world behind. An emergency hub that had once meant safety, now just a target. As we drove south toward Hank's land, I watched the tree line for movement. I didn't see the directive, but I knew they were out there. And I knew something else too, something that settled in me like a stone. The collapse wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. Because whatever had hit the magnetosphere, natural, man-made, or something stranger, had done more than knock out microchips and satellites. It had created a vacuum. And human beings hate vacuums. Someone always rushes in to fill them. Some with help, some with hunger. And some with 3 words that turn survival into an excuse. As the ranch came into view, dark barns, fenced fields, the outline of cattle huddled together for warmth. Hank pointed toward a low hill. Up there, he said, we can set watch, see anyone coming. I nodded. We turned this place into a refuge. Maya looked back at the people in the truck bed. Aaron holding June, Derek staring at the sky, Rosa already thinking like a medic in a war zone. And if they come here? Maya asked. I stared at the aurora overhead, rippling like a living wound across the morning sky. Then we make sure the rule they learn isn't theirs, I said. I said what I meant. We survive, I said, and we don't become them. Behind us, somewhere in town, the directive was probably gathering, writing names, painting slogans, calling it destiny. Ahead of us, at the ranch, we had work, real work. Fences, watch posts, water lines, food storage, community rules that didn't come from fear. And somewhere above us, Whatever had burned the modern world down was still humming in the sky, green and violet, like the planet itself was holding its breath. I didn't know who started the game. But I knew this: if they wanted survive or die to be law, they were going to learn what survival really looks like when the people they try to break refuse to play along. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.